Hello, everyone. Good day, Europe. Good morning, North and South America, and good evening to our listeners in Asia. My name is Carl Kvanmark. I'm based here in Stockholm, Sweden, where I work with the Employer Branding Academy. You are today going to listen to David Brudenell, the Chief Digital Officer at Universum. I'll get you an introduction to him very soon. First of all, I'm just going to go through a couple of slides regarding the Employer Branding Academy. And just to let everyone know, we will record this and we will also share the slides afterwards. So what is Employer Branding Academy? Well, it was started here in Stockholm in 2014. Now, almost 2 years later, we have around 500 people who have taken this course, and it's a blended course. You can take it online, and you can also come and join us in cities where we do full-day kickoff days and certification days. So it's a great opportunity for those who are interested in getting a certification and also learning the latest and newest things when it comes to employer branding. We have the next start with the cities in October, but you can of course always enroll and take the course fully online. So this is a brief overview how the Academy looks like when you take one of the packages where you invest around 15 to 20 hours over 8 weeks. And we are now, sorry, just for the little pause there, we need to increase the amount of people letting into the webinar. Sounds like a really good marketing says, but it says that we've reached the cap. Let me just double check if I can get that one going. These are the next start dates if you want to take the World Class Employer Branding course. And we're also releasing a fully new one called World Class Recruitment Marketing, which is only launched here in Stockholm. So it's a 1 day in Stockholm in August, and a kickoff day, certification day in October. If you are outside Europe or if you can't travel to Stockholm, don't you worry. We're gonna make sure that this gets rolled out globally as well. And this is the four very short bullet points about the World Class Employer Branding. The purpose is to get a strategic and structured approach to it using the 9-step module you can see here to your right. You will also get the latest tools, templates, and knowledge out there when it comes to employer branding, because we work day and night to populate our e-learning platform with that. You of course get a great and global network where you can continue communicate and share with each other using digital platforms as LinkedIn and emails, and you will get a certification that you can put on your LinkedIn profile and so on, and you also get it printed. This is basically how the modules looks like. It's divided into 4 different modules, where the 5th module is a case which you work on during the academy, and you present it during your certification day. Thank you. And now let's get David started. Good day, David. You're in New York, right?
I am. Good morning, Carl.
And you should now be the presenter. And I'll go into mute here.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Carl. It's great to speak to everyone, even all the Aussies down under where I usually reside, but today I'm in New York. Today I'm going to take you through a pretty fascinating look at social media and digital and how that affects the employer branding platform and the industry. And just so that everyone knows, a lot of the content and research for this particular presentation has been drawn from our white paper that we released a few months back called Inside Social Media: Course Corrections Ahead. So I would encourage everyone to download this white paper. It's free on universumglobal.com, and will give a little bit more deeper dive into some of the topics that we've talked about today. As Carl mentioned, my name is David Brudenell. I'm the Chief Browsing Officer at Universum. Officially to the rest of the world, I'm Chief Digital Officer, and I'm responsible for not only architecting the product and technology at Universum, but also leading what we call our activation organization. So that's really taking the data that we possess at Universum, working with our customers and clients and capturing their internal information and bringing that to life in terms of social media campaigns, digital solutions, on-campus solutions. Now, today I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the digital sphere with particular emphasis on social media because it's on the top of everyone's minds at the moment. But I want to just emphasize that before we go down the deep well of digital is that we should talk a little bit about that it's one piece of a multi-pronged puzzle or multi-pronged approach that you can have when building your employer branding strategy. Let's not forget that although digital is very important for generating awareness all the way down the recruitment funnel to converting potential applicants into your business, but there's also a very powerful moment when you can go on campus, when you can meet a person, when you're interviewing a person, you can shake their hands and look into their eyes. So online channels, which we'll talk a lot about today, which is social media, employer websites, ads on social media, and so on and so forth. But let's not forget at the back of our minds today is that this is one piece of a multi-channel strategy that you should be employing when starting to think about how to activate your employer brand, whether it be locally, regionally, or globally. So the first thing is that when you're starting to put together your activation plan for your employer brand is really to think about, well, where are talent spending the most time? And when we look at our data here, so this is American data that I'm looking at now, and I'm going to, throughout this presentation, intersperse different continental data throughout the presentation, so all different continents are represented. But when I look at the data here, when we're looking at the U.S. data, this is very similar across all of the countries, the 55 markets that we look at, is that social media is increasingly the most important channel for talent when they want to connect to employer brands. And not surprisingly, a recent release by Facebook in their quarterly earnings report said that the average Facebook user spends 59 minutes a day on Facebook. Now that's an incredible amount of time. That is more time than the average person spends exercising a day. It is almost as much time as we spend eating a day. We spend 1 hour and 6 minutes eating a day. So social media is part of our DNA. I like to consider it here at Universum, it's almost like a utility. It's almost like electricity. It's what we wake up with in the morning, and if you're like me, it's almost the last thing that you check before you go to bed in the evening. So social media has skyrocketed because of the usage rates and access rates across the world, and that has been largely perpetuated by mobile devices, right? We look at countries like Brazil and in Latin America where really social media and the internet in general skipped the desktop. It went directly to the mobile device, which makes it extremely portable and never more than 3 feet or a meter away from us. Let's not forget as well, job boards, although they're a little bit less sexy, they still are important in that journey that talent takes by creating awareness. When they consider you as an employer, let's not forget that they actually are going to job boards, they are going to your employer websites to check you out more deeply. So I'm a man of hyperboles, and for this one, I think it's well put in the sense that if you're not on social media today and you're not thinking about getting on it, if you aren't already, then you're going to face extinction in the near future. Now, that stat of 59 minutes per day of the average Facebook user, Facebook user spending on the app doesn't motivate you. It really should, because if you're not on social media today, you're going to die in the next little while. Now, the reason why, and I've alluded to this a little bit earlier, is that I don't know if you've known recently, but we now have 31 hours in a day, so we have more time on than on Mars. But the reason that we have more than 24 hours in a day now is because of the multiple devices that we're using at any one time. Now, I'm sure for the audience here listening in, you have your mobile phone beside you. If you're not listening on your mobile phone right now, you're in front of your desktop, and for some of you in the Aussie evening, you maybe even have Netflix on in the background, watching that on a low volume while listening to the Canadian drown on about employer branding right now. So what's happened is that because of multiple devices, we are adding additional time for our day. As you can see here, the greatest increase in that time is actually media and consumer technology consumption, or media consumption. So the Netflixes of the world, Hulu's, Facebook's, all of those devices are increasing the amount of time that we're spending essentially surfing the web. Interestingly, the amount of time we spend at work is only 6 hours, which I found quite surprising when this report was released by TNS in January of this year. But what's really fascinating is that when we see the explosion of the consumption of media, on this previous slide here on the far right, of 11 hours a day that we're spending consuming this type of video, audio, social media, gaming, and reading, is that at the end of the day, all of this consumption, or this explosion of consumption, is actually done on relatively few sites. So when we look at our mobile phone, as you can see here on the left, is that although there are on average 27 apps used per month by the average user, is that 75% of the time is actually only spent on 5 of them. When we look at websites, almost just shy of 100 websites that we go to each month, but almost half of it is spent on 5, right? And then when we look at channels, it's slightly higher, but again, what these statistics are saying is that although there is enormous amount of choice today, we continue to be creatures of habit, and we spend the same amount of time on the same apps, websites, and channels. Now, what this means is that although there is more time in the day that we have access to talent, is that time is still being spent on the same few websites, apps, and television channels. So the competition is actually just as fierce or more fierce. And when you look at the amount of time that people spend on Facebook, 20% of all online time is spent on Facebook. So again, you'll hear me talk a lot about Facebook, and the reason why I do that is simply because of the enormous access that Facebook offers employer branding professionals to connect to talent. There has never been a media channel in the history of man which offers almost 90% penetration into the population with such high amounts of participation rates in the particular service. So, a stat to take away from, and if you had a cocktail party to talk about, is, and this came from TNS in January of this year, that 1 in 3 minutes globally spent on a mobile phone is spent on a Facebook property. Now, if you don't know, Facebook owns Instagram, they own WhatsApp, and they own Messenger, as well as the core Facebook app. They also just recently purchased Oculus Rift. But when you think about, if you hadn't heard, Facebook bought WhatsApp, which is a messaging service, for $16 billion about a year and a half ago. It seemed like an enormous amount of money, $16 billion for an app. But when you think about it, Facebook is simply buying our time. They're buying more minutes of our time each day. More minutes of our time each day equals more opportunities to put in sponsors' ads. Because Facebook has such an enormous reach and penetration rate across the population, that $16 billion seems like a little bit of a steal. So, again, what I want to point out here is that not only is social media one of the most prominent places where an employer brand can actually interact with talent, is that increasingly it's Facebook which offers the greatest reach and overall time-based access to talent. And again, whether it's Americans or Australians or Peruvians or Colombians, I have here Americans love social media, but if you look at the averages, this is average hours per day which is spent on social media. It is incredible. When we look at the global average, it's 2.5 hours a day is spent on social media. And again, the majority of this, 78% of all social media, is consumed on a mobile device. So it is really individuals, or talent in this case, what I like to say is snacking on content. So the average iPhone user picks up their iPhone and unlocks it 80 times a day, according to Apple. For Android, it's well over 120. So, the mobile has changed the way that we actually consume data and consume content, and that's something to think about when you're starting to create the creative execution, which I'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation. So we look at social media, and when we asked Generation Z, which is an up-and-coming generation, this is for people born after 1996 and will represent a relatively large portion of our workforce with Generation Y and Millennials in the next 5 years, is that 85% of Gen Z respondents said that they want to interact with employer brands and would be happy to go through the recruitment process on social media. However, only 74%, when asked which companies or had they actually been exposed to it, said that they had actually been exposed to social recruiting or employer branding activities on social media. So what that's telling me is that there's a gap between the expectation of talent, and especially young talent, with the reality of it happening. So Good news is that if you're not on social media yet, then you're not going the way of the dodo just yet. You have a few more months to be able to do it. But it really, this data and the difference between the perception and reality, for me, it represents a good opportunity for employer brands to be able to actually go out and connect to talent in a meaningful way. So what I want to do now is talk about a few case in point and case studies of companies whom I think are doing it very well on social media, and we'll talk through some very particular case studies where there are KPIs on the back of it. So the first thing to think about is that Facebook is chock full of employer brands. Here's just a small snippet of brands that when I was doing my research, we discovered that were on social media. But again, let's not forget, although we are in the employer branding community, in terms of social media, we are a drop in the ocean of the number of brands who are trying to connect to talent every minute of the day. Facebook, in their last release, said they had over 30 million businesses who were on Facebook and advertising. So we are competing against marketing. We are competing against our families and our wives and husbands and daughters and sons and aunts and uncles posting pictures of their dogs and cat videos and things like that. So I want to point out that really social media, when you start to get into it, it really is a marathon and it's not a sprint. So when any marathoners who are out there, you have to know that you think about every kilometer and every mile, and you have to plan out that entire journey. You don't just get out and run it. So something to be said about when you're starting to get into social media, or if you're in it already, is to be able to think much more long term than looking at just, well, how did my post perform? A company that I think does it very well, and Stacy Zapier, who built the employer branding architecture at Zappos. And one of the things I really like about Zappos here, some of their Instagram feeds, is that Zappos has really bequeathed the social media activation component of their business really to their employees. If you've noticed here, the photography that they use is all mobile based. You can tell this being taken with a mobile phone, and that it's also really personable, and it's employee first and brand second. Now, Zappos is one of those companies in employer branding lore which has really laid the foundation for how to talk to employees and creating ongoing communities and talent pools for their staff. And what I like about Zappos, and I've been there, is that the reflection on the outside world through their social channels is almost identical to what it's like internally. They really are honest and true and credible, and that really, I think, attracts the right people, but also it opts out people who may not be the right fit for Zappos. Again, when we're looking at Starbucks, a couple of things to point out here in terms of their creative execution and their messaging. What I really like here is that when you think about Facebook and Instagram and all those different platforms, they're really dominated usually by one color. Facebook, the app, you're surrounded by a lot of blue. In Instagram, although with its recent release, it's now white. Before it was kind of a motley or a mocha brown. Is that what I really like about Starbucks is they use that beautiful, consistent green all the way through. Again, you can see here that Starbucks, their EB team, has been curating the images from their staff, and in many cases, they allow their staff to be able to go out there and really push out content on their own accord with a number of different hashtags. And you can see here the use of a really great hashtag, Green Apron. It's very employee-centric. It has some consistency. It's unique, and you can see here that you can really experience what a life of a Starbucks employee is, and it doesn't feel corporate. That middle picture is a bit staged. However, when you look at the Starbucks Instagram feed overall, it's very, very authentic. Another great, and what I would argue is one of the leaders in the industry when it comes to digital activation, is L'Oreal. What I wanted to do in this smattering of pictures here is point out that you don't always have to follow a particular vein of photography or imagery. And what I love about L'Oreal is that although they're an enormous global company, they're not afraid to experiment. You can see here on the left, they have what looks like quite a staged and highly edited photo of people having fun. It looks like at the Color Festival. You can see that L'Oreal also talks about their products, and they realize that a lot of the people who want to work for them are also product loyalists, so they play on that. And you can also see on the far right, in the top, across the top row there, that they even have highly authentic pictures of their soccer team. This is in Latin America. Also to point out about the bravery of L'Oreal is that not only do they run their brand storm competitions in Latin America, but also they're not afraid to experiment. L'Oreal was one of the first companies that I saw out on Snapchat trying new things, experimenting, and that really goes to show that although it seems to be a new platform popping up each week, the risk is actually not really experimenting with it and being being third or fourth mover. Really what you want to do on these platforms to build your base is to be able to get in fast, be authentic, and really start to then have those people who are now participating in the content then bring their networks of friends and colleagues into your page, into your feed, or in the case of Snapchat, your daily story. What I really like here about EY, if anyone knows, EY is a professional services company focused largely on finance. And what I really like about the photography here is that it's very, very authentic. It answers the questions that I think a lot of talent are afraid to ask. And it's something that's not really apparent on first pass, but you can see here that for all of these talent, you can see here the first thing is that they're all wearing their lanyard. Those questions of, do I wear a suit? How do I dress professionally for work? What are my colleagues going to look like? All those questions are answered by these pictures. And you can see here that these staff members are very authentic. They look slightly embarrassed and nervous about their picture being taken, but they're honest and genuine. Those smiles are real. The backgrounds are real. In these particular selection of photos that I've chosen, you don't really get a glimpse of the office, but in the general EY feed in Latin America, you get a really good perspective of what it's like to work inside the company. And you can see here, this is an actual quote from talent that we captured through our Universum survey when it came to EY. And really it's about getting and seeing what it's like to work inside of EY and other organizations, and getting an inside view of what the working culture is like. And social media is amazing because it allows you to do that not only regularly, but it gives you a number of different types of mediums, video, audio, 360 views, those types of things to really show what your culture looks like and what the office environment looks like as well. What I really like here, and you'll hear me talk a lot about Latin America. Latin America, in my opinion, is one of the most progressive regions when it comes to employer branding and social media. So for all those people outside of Latin America, I would encourage you to get on your Facebook feeds and your Instagram feeds and look at some of these Latin American clients. ITAL BBA is a bank. One would argue is, okay, that's a bit challenging, they're a bit boring and highly regulated. But ITAL did an entire campaign with only emojis. So the concept was, we speak in your language, and especially for an internship campaign that they were running. And they ran the whole campaign with emojis, which I thought was very cool and highly successful. And you can see here that they intersperse these very progressive campaign ideas with more traditional imagery and social media posting. But you can see here that they follow the employee first and brand second mentality, not only in their creative execution, but also in what they're talking about. You can see here that this particular woman, Thais, she's talking about her experience and what she likes about the people whom she works with, which, as we know, is a very important thing with talent, as I mentioned in the earlier slide. So when we actually distribute this presentation, I would encourage you to, if you see at the bottom left-hand corner there, you can actually watch the emoji video. So they have a YouTube video and YouTube channel dedicated to this campaign as well, which is very, very cool. So I mentioned before that you need to be social or die, but that wasn't the whole truth. You actually not only need to be on social, but you actually have to think about optimizing. You can't just chuck an intern on it and say, go talk about us socially and expect that it's going to work. You really need to think deeply, and that's because of the high levels of competition, but also not only within the employer branding industry, but also, as I mentioned, with marketers and small businesses and everybody else on the social networks. So there's 4 areas that you should be thinking about in your optimization. The platform mix, you should be leveraging promotion, having a consistent look and feel, and then differentiation. So what we're going to talk about first is the platform mix right now, and really think about where you're going to be spending the majority of your time, effort, and budget. Now, as I mentioned to you before, I'm very hot on Facebook for the key reason that is most people spend most of their time on Facebook. Now, I know some of you would have heard read or heard from someone that millennials, Generation Z are leaving Facebook in droves. I hear that at least once a week from somebody. The truth is that is not the truth. Facebook is one of the core apps on all of those generational cohorts, mobile phones. They all participate on Facebook in a very regular fashion. The method that they participate is very different, however. Generation Z are much more passive. They use Facebook much like a newspaper. We would a newspaper for those older people on the call for getting news. They don't post as much, but everybody uses it. And when you're on social media, in particular Facebook, is that the expectation is once you're in, you've got to be in it to win it. And the average 85% of all talent whom we ask, why they choose to, if they've chosen to engage with an employer brand on social media, what is your expectation around how often should they post? 85% that you should be posting 3 times per week. So that's the minimum threshold of content that you need to be pushing out every single week. And when we look at the different types of platforms that people are on, again, it's horses for courses. It really depends on where your where your talent is and what type of talent cohort you're looking for. Professionals versus young talent versus Generation Z and so on and so forth. But you can really see here that the stats really don't lie when we look at these large groupings of global statistics that we capture at Universum. The majority of people are spending their time on Facebook. Interestingly, Instagram and Snapchat have shot up, and really, LinkedIn is still present, and I think very important in the overall talent journey. When a talent has interacted with you on social media, been participating, seen your Snapchat daily, and those types of things, of course they're going to go to LinkedIn because it's the professional network. It's where you as an employer are a bit more vetted to look at it. So I would argue that LinkedIn participation is a bit more deeper in the recruitment funnel. But you can see here that that Instagram and Snapchat are becoming increasingly important, much more so than LinkedIn. So when you're thinking about your platform mix, you have to really, and I would recommend going out and finding the data to see where your talent needs, where they're spending the majority of their time, and then mapping that against your particular platform strategy. Again, I keep talking about Facebook. Over 1 billion people log into Facebook every day. It's growing by almost 20% year on year. 1 in 7 people on this planet log on to Facebook every single day. That's an amazing, amazing stat. So, but although I'm very hot on Facebook, as I mentioned before, you shouldn't be exclusive. You should be choosing multiple platforms to be able to communicate to talent, and there is a way to actually scale your content across those different channels so you're not creating totally new content every single time. Again, talking a little bit about Instagram, enormous growth. Instagram I really love because it's about how you want the world to perceive you, and the expectations aren't as high when it comes to posting regularly. You can see that Instagram is a bit more of a lensed view, or looking at life through rose-colored glasses, but it's a very, very powerful platform. And in August of last year, Instagram opened its platform for advertising, and I'll talk about in a case study with Unilever in just a moment that it's incredibly effective, the advertising on Instagram. So something to think about there. LinkedIn, again, as I mentioned before, I think its use is a little bit deeper in the recruitment funnel for particular talent, but it's got great penetration and reach, and it should be part of your mix. I guess my general guidance here is that you should be thinking about where in the actual recruitment funnel talent are connecting to you via LinkedIn, and then making your budgetary assignments to LinkedIn proportional to that amount of access and time that the talent are spending engaging with your employer brand. Again, mixing your message. Although when you finish your EVP process, you'll have usually between 3 and 5 pillars of your EVP. You need to post 3 times a week at a minimum, so you're going to run out of stuff to say if you just talk about your pillars all the time. So you need to mix your message up. You need to move into the gray and find new and exciting ways to be able to talk to talent while referencing those core pillars of your EVP. And you can see here that people are very interested about the recruitment process and also job openings, but how do you communicate that without putting up a boring job post on Facebook? There are employers out there who just literally repost a job ad on their Facebook feed and get no engagement. So you're better off doing nothing than posting something as boring as that. So the key thing here is to think about what you're messaging about, and also making sure that you're mixing it up and providing a broad view of what it looks like and how your company works inside the talent, while linking to your core EVP pillars. As we move to promotion, I've alluded to this a bit before with the Instagram component, but promotion is really, really important. So this is paid media spend. And as I mentioned to you before, that although the amount of devices that we're using and the screen time is exploding, we still spend the same amount of time, largely, on a core number of apps, is that it's very noisy. And as this comes directly from Facebook's blog, as the average user has about 1,500 posts queued up in your newsfeed. So if you open your newsfeed on Facebook, you'll have 50 posts queued up. And the goal is to try and get to the top of the newsfeed. Now, you can do that organically. It's becoming increasingly more challenging for brands because Facebook is upweighting their algorithm to favor your friends and family and the things that you're most interested in over your organic posting of employer brands. But you can get to the top of the newsfeed by paying. So not a surprising strategy, right? Enormous amount of noise, as I mentioned to you before, across all the different digital channels. So you need to pay really to get to the top. You can see here that organic reach, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is going down for organic for employer brands and for businesses in general. And the reason why is that there's just so much content that is appearing on social media platforms that there's just not enough time for people to get through everything. And that comment comes directly from the Facebook blog. So you can see here in the last second, there's been over 500,000 comments, 300,000 statuses were updated, and 136,000 photos were uploaded. So that's the last second on Facebook. So an incredible deluge of content that's going into there. Now, something to think about, and I'm going to talk about the importance of Facebook fans and things like that, but as I mentioned, as social media organic reach goes down, what that means is that the posts that you're putting up are being seen by less of your fans. This stat comes directly from Facebook again, is that the organic reach has been going down so that the average organic reach for a brand on Facebook is about 2%, which means that if you have 1 million fans on your page, only 20,000 will see the post that you put up today. And the reason is that people just have so many posts in their newsfeed that they can't get to it. So it's not enough just to be putting up posts organically. The people who are interested in your company to work for your company, they just won't see your posts. So you need to intersperse your paid media with your organic media. Now, the good news is that it's actually very economical. You don't need to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars promoting your posts. You can do it with $50 on Facebook, and Snapchat just opened up its geo-targeting, for example, for its filters, and for $5 you can target 20,000 square feet, which is roughly an entire university or an entire region. You could cover all of Manhattan for a few bucks a day. So it's very economical to be able to advertise to people. As I mentioned before, because of the decreases in organic reach, this is what I would argue is the progression or the increase in sophistication of the algorithms on social media. Is when Facebook and social media started, it was all about getting likes. Then you wanted to get everyone to your fan pages. According to Facebook, likes don't matter anymore. And the reason why is what I mentioned to you before: increases in content, the increasing sophistication of the algorithms of these platforms and putting the right content in front of the right people, where today, and where I believe it's going, is all about content. If content is king, context is queen, and really it's about getting the right message to those individuals, and you can target them on a very, very deep basis. So don't worry about the likes on your page. That's not an important metric for you to be thinking about. It's about engagement. So how many of your talent who are connected to your page are engaging with you? Now, engagement is calculated as likes plus comments plus shared, all divided by the total number of fans on your page. So that's the metric and KPI that you should be using to track your success of the content or the effectiveness of your content. So as I mentioned before, likes and shares don't really matter, but what this allows you to do is actually control whom sees. By paying, you can control very tightly who sees and how often they see your content. Now, this is one of my favorite sections because it's a bit of a cautionary tale about consistent look and feel. And what I like here about P&G, some of this content is a little bit older, but wherever you go in the world, you know that you're interacting with the P&G brand. You can see the consistency here, the language. P&G is great in keeping to their to their particular EVP values and their creative alignment. And not surprisingly, because of the amount of money P&G spends on marketing, this is naturally bled across into their EV teams. So the next thing here is the differentiation. Again, this is a bit of a cautionary tale, is that you have to be really careful when choosing your content. Now, when I have the great pleasure of playing on the internet a lot, and I get to spend a lot of my time looking at employer brands and how they participate on social media. And when I was in Latin America, I found some really interesting stuff. So first of all, in P&G in Mexico, they're talking about here an internship program and recruitment at P&G, and you notice this, good-looking guy in the dark jacket at P&G. And what was really interesting is that not only did I see him, and apparently he works for P&G, but he also works for Johnson & Johnson. And upon a deeper look, I also found out that he works for GE. So there must be this guy, I don't know about you, but he must be a very top employee to be working across all of these three companies. Now, in all seriousness, this is a cautionary tale to make sure that when you are choosing photography, this is a piece of stock photography, is that you have to be very careful that it's not going to be used, or that you're going to buy the exclusive license to this piece of photography. Now, what's really disappointing here is that likely that talent who are engaging with P&G in Mexico are also engaging with Johnson & Johnson, right? Because they're recruitment competitors. And if you're IT talent, then you're looking across all of this, and it's a subtle thing, but it just loses a little bit of credibility across the back of that. Now, also you have your creative and the imagery that you're choosing. The best defense against this type of situation is actually using authentic mobile photography, right? Just go out there, take pictures with your mobile phones and your staff, their mobile phones. It's incredibly authentic. Those types of photography work better than stock photography, and then you won't fall into the trap as these three companies did with this guy here across the photos. The second thing is that when you have your messaging and when you're thinking about taglines and then those types of things, you have to be very careful to look at what's out there and do a little bit of searching to make sure that your message is unique. We're looking at the banking industry here. I've since extended this to the hotel industry, which also falls into this trap. But I don't know if you guys see this. This is Citibank, Bank of America, Heineken, and HSBC. And if you notice something, apparently, in all of these places, they offer you a world of opportunity. You can see here, it's almost a cookie-cutter tagline that they offer. This is extended into IPG, hotel brands, and a whole bunch of other ones, is that you lose, with all of that work you're putting into your EVP, to have it all washed out by a very poor and undifferentiated tagline is really disappointing. So when you're thinking about your messaging, and this is not only your taglines, but your hashtags and things like that, is that you need to think deeply about your differentiation. Not only your creative imagery, but the way and the language that you use, and also your taglines, as we see in this kind of critical tale here. So getting a human touch on your employer brand is really important. And we have a very cool product at Universum called Iris, which is actually getting local talent. So talent in America, talent in Australia, talent in Singapore, looking at every single employer brand post that's put up every single day, and using our framework to be able to tell us what they think you are trying to talk about. And what I'm looking at here is, this is 2015 data that we're looking at. And this is over 120,000 pieces of content that talent globally looked at from over 1,800 employer brands on social media. And they told us that over 120,000 posts that went out last year, they thought you were talking about attractive products and services. But the interesting thing here, if you look at the bars, this is the volume of those 120,000 posts. So you can see here from March through April, it was slightly higher. Employer brands talked more about themselves and their products and services during Q2 than they did in other quarters. But the area chart, that wobbly line that you see underneath it, or excuse me, on top of it, that represents the average post engagement for the period. So what we see is higher volume of employers talking about their products and services in the first half of the year, but you can see a spike in June and July in the actual engagement, and also through November. So what this chart, and this is one of 40 that we have in the online tool that you have for Iris, is that sometimes the noise you have to balance against what talent are actually interested in hearing about. So not only do you have to worry about the competition, differentiation, consistent look and feel, but even what to talk about changes over time. So what I'm trying to say here is that you need to employ all of the tools and data that you can when starting to build your strategy. You can't just go talk to your agenda. You have to actually think about talent's agenda and what they're really interested in. Now this chart is largely why I made that big hyperbole about that you need to be social or die, is that this is IRIS data again. This is hundreds of thousands of posts that we looked at from 1,800 employers globally. And what we see here in the green line is that the average post engagement, right? So post engagement is the relative fit to what the expectations of talent are. The higher the post engagement, the better the post, really. Is that overall, the global average of post engagement is going up, which is good news, right? So as an industry, we're getting better at engaging with talent. But the dotted line at the very top, in each quarter, what we did was we took the highest and most engaged post for the period and compared that to the global average. So you can see here that there's an enormous performance gap. Now what I want to point out is this chart is actually a log chart. So in Q4 of 2015, there was one post that had 100,000 times higher engagement than the global average. Now it's likely that this post was sponsored, but that's not the point. It's that this company actually chose to sponsor the post, and that actual post was deeply and very purposefully done to get such high engagement. So why I say that you need to be social or die is that the gap between the good and the great is widening at an increasing pace. So if you don't get in now, you're going to be stuck with everybody else competing for the scraps of what's left over after the top talent have gone. So something to think about, and this is a very sobering chart, and I would encourage everyone to read deeply into some of the commentary that I put in here on what this actually means for industry. Now let's move into a case study. ExxonMobil. They're, if everyone knows here, they're an oil and gas company, highly regulated. They're very nervous about getting into social media. And when we started to partner with them at Universum, we started to think about, well, how can we do it in the most meaningful way? We looked at the data. We applied all the things that we talked about today around platform mix, differentiation, using data to drive strategy. And what we discovered was actually Facebook was a real opportunity for ExxonMobil to reach all of the PhDs, reach warehouse operators, reach the wide cut of talent that ExxonMobil was looking for, not only professionally at the top end, but also students. So we went down, and for all of you trying to get a social campaign off the ground, with ExxonMobil, we had this program of starting with a very small pilot around diversity. That's always a great way I found to get pilots started, because it's a challenge for most employers. And we've had a very wonderful run with ExxonMobil, over delivering and really curating the right audiences for ExxonMobil. Now, fast forward a year, is that you can see a very highly regulated company can become a real social darling. Now, this is a campaign that we ran for them, and this shows what can happen if you invest in that kind of marathon plan for your social media page. So, after 12 months, Exxon had been slowly curating the right audience of PhDs, electrical engineers, people whom would want to work for ExxonMobil. And they, like all of you, I would imagine, had a knock at their door from a department, and they needed some help filling 100 roles in Baton Rouge, which is a very particular area here in the United States. And so naturally, they came to their social media team, and as we were partnering with ExxonMobil, us at Universum, and in 5 days, we created this recruitment campaign targeting these particular areas, so process operators to mechanical crafts, electricians, and warehouse operators. Now, again, Exxon had been investing in their organic social media content, so they've been producing posts very regularly. But in this particular case, we spent $350 on a sponsored ad, and we had, over a 48-hour period, almost 8,000 targeted applications come through the door. There are so many applications that their ATS system couldn't handle that many concurrent applications. They had to take in walk-ins for the campaign. Now, what's really amazing about this, and why I'm so hot on social media as a tool to build your employer brand, is that social media, when done properly, can not only build your employer brand, but it can also deliver on direct recruitment outcomes. Because of the access of Facebook and WhatsApp and LinkedIn, you have the ability to actually target deeply those talent who you very particularly need at a certain point in time. And if you follow the rules of data-led, human, and purposeful content, you'll be able to actually get those talent through the door. Now, you can see that this was in late March of this year, this particular case study, so we're just waiting on the quality data to come through. But what I can tell you is not only that this was a 5-cent cost per application going into ExxonMobil, but also that those 7,674 applications, they were targeted applications. So they are based on job roles that we were able to target from users through the Facebook targeting ad engine. So all of these people met the criteria that we were looking for, the top level in terms of what they do. So moving forward, and what's really great about ExxonMobil is that as you start to intermix the paid media, the organic media, some really magical things can happen. If you look here on the left, this is kind of one of the comments from a post that went up there, and there's a talent that asks if they hire minorities, and you can see here that this is ExxonMobil and vis-a-vis Universum responding in a data-led way using the attribution that ExxonMobil wants to emphasize from their EVP. But you can see here in unsolicited fashion, Sam here wrote that he's an African American. He's been working for ExxonMobil for 10 years and he has nothing but good things to say about the company, and that he encouraged this talent to apply. So when done correctly, social media can really spin into wonderful interactions with your internal activation, and your employees can become ambassadors for your business, as Sam here at ExxonMobil has for in this particular post. And the second thing is, when done correctly, ExxonMobil is 99% smaller when it comes to fans on their Facebook page than their competitors, but it is 700% higher engagement it gets on average for every single post. So what's happening is that Facebook is rewarding Exxon by increasing its organic reach. So you can see here Justin Bowers works for a competitor of ExxonMobil, and he's interacting with ExxonMobil's page. So you can actually, ExxonMobil has created some new gravity to suck talent from their competitors and have them start to interact with the page and participate. A second thing here for Unilever, and I think something to think about, is also how Instagram can be used to actually in the ad engine there to really leverage a campaign. If you don't know, Unilever runs a very fantastic program called the Future Leaders League globally. It's called different things in different regions. It's called the Quest here in the Middle East. And you can see here that some of the challenges that the Middle East had was multicultural, multi-faith, multilingual, and there's very specific minority requirements that were required for this particular campaign. I'll let you read the details of this, but you can see here that we had the blue line. That was the previous agency who'd done quite well when it comes to getting applications, just shy of 4,000 applications the previous year. But when you employ the techniques that I talked about today, using a data-led, human and purposeful technique, you can see here in the orange, this is us at Universum, that we were able to more than double the application rate across the same period, and got some fantastic double and triple digit results in some very difficult regions. And that was done using all the techniques that I talked about today. Again, I want to actually encourage you all to, when you're thinking about platforms, is not to restrict yourself to only the platform. If you're looking at here, Lamborghini, they surprisingly were not on the top LinkedIn rankings in Italy for top employers, and they wanted to be, so they came to us to work on a campaign for them. And really they wanted to target engineers to build their cars. Now, in our study, in our data analysis, we discovered that those engineers were not on LinkedIn. So that posed a bit of a problem because they needed to see people on LinkedIn, and that's where they wanted to make their play in terms of content. So what we did was we looked at actually the consumer brand, Lamborghini brand, on Facebook, which has millions of fans, and we discovered that those engineers and mechanics were actually on the Facebook page. So what we did is we ran a Facebook targeted campaign to those engineers and moved those engineers to LinkedIn. So we kind of hijacked the mechanism there and pushed traffic to LinkedIn, which did two things. It moved those targeted engineers to LinkedIn, which was the main place or home socially that Lamborghini wanted to operate in. And also we were able to drive an enormous number of impressions and sentiment towards that particular campaign, so much so that Lamborghini was, for the first time, named one of the top employers on LinkedIn's ranking. So again, don't be beholden to just one platform. You can move talent between platforms, and paid media allows you to do that very, very easily. So kind of my final recommendations as we finish off the webinar here You know, it's all about finding the right mix, and data, let data be your guiding or North Star with this. There's tons of it out there. There's free stuff at Universum that you can go to. The membership that we have is fantastic, and but there's also great sites like Statista and other places which will help you shape what platform mix you're going to go through and how you're going to speak to talent. Make sure you have your EVP. That's another thing that's not on this list, but it should be before number one. Leverage sponsored ads and sponsored media. Hopefully I've given you some really good examples of that, and how you can use it in a not only sometimes a unique way, but a consistent way. Make sure that your look and feel is consistent and differentiated, and make sure that you're talking about real things in your organization. In the world of social media and on-demand access, people expect a little bit of, they expect a lot of authenticity, which means that you don't have to be fully polished all the time. It's better to be authentic than it is to be polished in social media these days, according to me. And then finally, this is the principles that we operate at Universum, so data-led, human, and purposeful. So make sure that using data to make decisions, talk about your employees first, not your employer brands. And finally, make sure that when you're creating content, make sure that the content is fit for purpose on the platform. Social media is for socializing. Socializing implies that you're having a conversation. A conversation is two ways. Don't talk to talent, ask questions to talent, and guess what? They'll start to answer. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening. It looks like we've had everyone stay on the call, so thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully it was helpful today. And I think now we'll open up for questions. I think I saw some questions coming through. So Carl, do you want to maybe kind of curate some of the questions, and I can do my best to answer them?
Definitely, and thank you so much, David. One question that we got, and I thought this was a really good one. Do you recommend having a separate Facebook page for your careers, independent of your company page?
Good question. And my quick and fast answer is yes. And the reason why I recommend having a differentiated page is that people go to different pages for very different reasons. There's no friction in liking in the worrying about liking one page or another. Most time, talent will engage with both pages, and having a dedicated careers page on Facebook will it's a great incentive to create consistent content. When you're piggybacking onto a corporate feed or a marketing feed, you're not putting out enough content to really engage with talent. And then on the flip side, marketing and corporate relations are quite sophisticated operators when it comes to social media, so they're pushing out a lot of content, which essentially may dilute your content being pushed out there. So my quick and fast answer is actually yes, you should have a dedicated page, because again, that will allow talent to really see consistently across time what it's like to work inside of your company.
Thank you. And the next question, which is, you talked a little bit about it, but is when you're talking about different channels, and you showed some data from the students, but which one would you say is the best way to reach professionals? And I know this is a very common question. Which is the best channel to reach professionals?
Yeah. My answer might be counterintuitive to most what you're thinking. Most are thinking on LinkedIn, I'm sure, at the moment. But I would argue that Facebook is really an untapped and amazing resource to reach professionals. The reason why I say that is that everyone, and again, there's a slight asterisk there, but largely it's 95% of the population, the working population, will have a Facebook account. And they go on it every single day for, on average, 59 minutes. So that, just the access alone gives us as employer brand practitioners more opportunity to actually get in front of talent. People spend 59 minutes a day on Facebook, and they spend on average about 30 minutes a month on LinkedIn. So when you look at that math there, you're going to get many more opportunities to connect to talent. So my 2016 recommendation is actually Facebook, because it offers deeper targeting than on LinkedIn, and more access for more time to professionals. You've got to earn it. You've got to earn that like for a person to engage with your page, but once you do, you're going to have more opportunities to tell your story.
Wonderful, thank you. And the last questions for today. I know a lot of people have written questions, and we will email a reply to those. Sorry if we can get everyone answered, but it's from Michael, and it's of course looking at trends as Snapchat and Pokemon Go appearing every month. It's hard to get an overview. Is there a difference between like private apps and job apps and so on? And he also asked, do you have to take part in every trend? Like, do you have to set up a Pokemon stop at your company to get the talent in 2016?
Yeah, not a bad idea considering the growth of Pokemon. But I think, again, it comes down to the platform mix and choosing your big bets. The data doesn't lie, and people's behaviors is always a great way to make those decisions on where you're going to be. I talk a lot about Facebook. If you look at the data as well, we hear a lot about Snapchat, Pokemon Go, and things like that. Now, Pokemon is a little bit of a phenom. It's grown so fast; it's bigger than Twitter now in only 2 weeks. But I think the things that the group should be thinking about is where are you going to get the most access to the largest group of talent, and for how long are those talent participating on the platforms, right? So one of the things that's really starting to pick up is what's called narrowcast social media. Now, broadcast social medias are things like LinkedIn and Facebook, where when you put a post, it goes to all of your friends. Narrowcast social media is things like messaging, so WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook Messenger, and also Snapchat, which is to either individuals or very, very small groups of individuals. So when you're thinking about your platform mix, I would think about it as in broadcast social media and narrowcast, and choosing one in each to be able to make your initial bets, and then proving that as a relative, proving that success, right, in each of those platforms. So again, if I was speaking to one of our customers at Universum and they asked me for advice, I'd be recommending Facebook on the broadcast side, and I'd be recommending that brand starts to invest in narrowcast. And typically, it's either Instagram, which kind of sits in the middle between broadcast and narrowcast social media, or messaging, so investing in WeChat or WhatsApp, because when you start to look at the data, and I would encourage the group to start looking at messaging as a growth driver for their activation, is messaging is growing at 17% CAGR every single year, and by 2019, messaging will be larger than social media. So something to think about there. So keep your eyes on messaging, and again, if you're able to choose one narrowcast and one broadcast social media platform to work with, it would be Facebook in messaging or Facebook and Instagram in my recommendation, Carl.
Perfect, David. Thank you so much. And that concludes the presentation of today. Thank you so much for taking your time, David.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and good luck on your next courses and classes in the Employer Branding Academy.
Thank you. Have a good day.